Hi everyone, I'm back with the next tutorial for the Tentacle Shawl. This time I'm going to be showing you how to double knit an F side of the one of the tentacles. We're going to be using our US size 6 or 4mm circular knitting needles and worsted weight yarn. Just like before, our F side is going to be yellow and our B side is going to be orange. One thing I should note before we get started are these long tails dangling off the back end of our cast-on row. They're very easy to confuse with the live yarn that we're going to be using, especially when you're doing B-side rows. So I recommend that first thing, before you start doing any knitting at all, you take them and you put them in a loose knot. A slip knot, perhaps. That's what I'm going to use. Just to make it harder to accidentally pick them up and start knitting with them. To begin with, we're going to start by purling into the first stitch with the B strand. One thing to note about this pattern is that throughout the entire piece there are no color changes anywhere. Literally any knit or purl stitch that you do should be with a strand that matches the stitch that you are knitting or purling into. So we begin by purling. For most F-side rows, when you're starting, the orange will already be in the front, and the yellow, or F, will already be in the back. This one's slightly funky because we've just cast it on, so we'll just need to move the yellow to the back. And when we do that, we're also going to want to move the orange to the back. Both the F and B strands in the back. And then we're going to knit into that first F stitch with the F strand. Once we've done that, we'll want to move both strands to the front. We want to do that without twisting them around each other. Just let them sit side by side, like you can see. And then we're going to purl into that B stitch with the B strand. Slip it off and move both of those strands to the back. Again, side by side, no twisting. We're going to knit into the next stitch. Knitting into the F stitch with the F strand. Both strands to the front, no twisting, and purl B into B. And we're going to continue doing that until we reach the last two stitches on the left needle. Moving back and forth, keeping those two strands of live yarn side by side, not crossing them over each other, and only knitting or purling with one of them at a time. And now we're starting to approach those last 2 stitches. Just a couple more left. Alright. Now we've finished everything but these last 2 stitches, and as you can see, the F side of the piece is just solid yellow. No orange twists to the front. And the B side is all orange. No twists or stitches poking through. All orange. And if you look at it from the bottom, you can see the beginnings of 2 separate sheets of yarn sitting alongside each other. Those 2 separate layers of knitted fabric. One mistake that can be easy to make is to accidentally wrap the yarn around the knitting needle, and of course you want to avoid doing that. But now we're at the last 2 stitches. They might be a little bit loose because they were just cast on with the loop method, so I'll try to tighten those up a little. Again, having our live yarn sitting side by side. What we're going to do is, with our live yarn to the back, we're going to slip that first F stitch knitwise. Once we've got that moved on to our right needle, we're going to take our B strand only and take it over the top between the 2 needles, just like that, over the yellow strand and between the 2 needles, through to the front side of the piece. And then we slip that last stitch, also knitwise. And if you can disregard the long tails, that leaves us with an orange strand coming out of the yellow side and a yellow strand coming out of the orange side, right where we'll need them to start knitting and purling the B side. I will take a break to knit up a B side and then show you how this works for a row that isn't the first row of F side double knitting. Alright, now that I've finished knitting that first B side row, I'm ready to show you, again, how to double knit the F side, this time with a row that isn't the first row of one of the tentacles. If everything went well when you finished your B side row, you should have your B side strand sticking out the F side of the piece, and your F side sticking out the B side, right where you need them to purl and knit respectively. So, we start by doing just that. We purl into the first stitch, taking up that B strand, and then we move it to the back, and we knit into that stitch our F stitch with the F strand. From this point on, we keep our 2 live strands together, side by side, not crossing them over each other, and we move them both to the front, where we purl, both to the back, where we knit, both to the front, where we purl, back, side by side, no crossing over, where we knit. And we keep on doing that until we get to our last 2 stitches, just like before. And then, when we get to those last 2 stitches, we move both strands to the back, and we slip that F stitch knitwise. And then, we take our B strand, and we pull it over the F strand to the front, before slipping our final stitch knitwise. And that leaves us with a B strand to the back, ready to be knitted when we start the B side. An F strand to the front, ready for us to purl with when we turn this thing around. No funky loops around the bottom of it, just a nice sheet of all yellow stitches. A nice sheet of all orange stitches. The bottom, where you can see how they sit alongside each other. And the beginnings of sides, where they stick together nicely without any gapping.